Welcome to episode 2 of Keeping Coop in the Loop, Cooper City's official podcast to help keep the great people of Someplace Special informed about key happenings and events. I'm Mike Cabello, Director of Communications and Public Information Officer for Cooper City. Whether you found our new podcast within the weekly newsletter, on social media, or perhaps you downloaded it from your favorite spot for podcasts, we really thank you for listening. When it comes to reasons why families choose to call Cooper City home, public safety is always near the top of the list. In fact, safety is one of the main reasons why Cooper City is consistently at or near the top of many rankings that look at the safest places to raise a family in Broward County and Florida in general. This month's episode focuses solely on our new Chief of Police, who returns to Someplace Special to lead the men and women of our BSO Cooper City District. So today we have the opportunity to chat with our new District Chief, Captain Andrea Tianga, who has been with the city now for just a little over 2 months. So Captain, thank you for joining us today on the podcast, which is relatively new. So in a sense, you're one of our first guests on this, so thank you for joining us.
Well, then it's a huge honor. Thank you so much for having me.
As I mentioned, it's been a little over 2 months since the commission appointed you. I wanted you to have an opportunity for those who have never met you, maybe never even knew that you worked in Cooper City or grew up here, just a little opportunity to give an introduction to those, a message to the residents out there who are meeting you in a sense for the first time.
Well, it's super nice to meet everybody. I actually moved to Cooper City when I was 11 years old. I'm South Florida born and raised, but came to Cooper City when I was 11, moved to Embassy Lakes, went to Pioneer Middle School. I graduated from Cooper City High. So yeah, I'm a Cooper City kid through and through.
And in a sense, returning to a place that is very familiar, not just for work, for where you've lived. Just wanted to get a sense for how it's been, returning to a familiar role ever since getting settled in. What's something that you love about being able to come back to a familiar place? You're kind of hitting the nail on the head with the familiarity. It's not just having a memory in every corner. I can think about, getting lost on my bike the first time being in Embassy Lakes and losing my dog, and my dog actually getting picked up by Cooper City Police back when the police station was in Rock Creek and having to pick her up from there, or my dad teaching my sister and I to drive stick shift at Brian Piccolo Park. I feel like there's just such a story everywhere I go, but it's not just the stories, it's almost the culture of Cooper City. It's a very particular place. I've lived in a bunch of places, and in South Florida, you're really not going to find a culture. It's like South Florida's version of Mayberry. It's a close-knit community that looks out for each other. They're very invested in the success of the city. So I really love that part about it. I really love the culture. People I went to school with that, you're a young, dumb kid and you move away because you're like, I'm getting out of this hometown, right? They go off to college or they go off to try to start their life. They all came back here to raise their families. Yeah. Because once you grow up and you realize, wow, this really is someplace special, you come back. Mm-hmm. And especially in this day and age, right, in policing, we talk a lot about being able to, relate with the folks that you're serving and protecting. That's got to go a long way in terms of, the trustworthiness that you always have the best interests for those. And I've seen it, your interactions, whether it's a kid, an adult, that goes a long way in this job that you have. And right, it's about being human and having the ability to connect with folks. Is that something that you've always had, that ability to connect with individuals, or has it grown as you've learned in this job?
I've definitely learned a lot in this job and changed significantly throughout my career. I started when I was 20 years old. So, I can think of going to a domestic disturbance and talking to people who've been married for 35 years about how they're supposed to be married. And they're like, we've been married longer than you've been alive. Don't give us advice. And I just kind of grew throughout the years. I can remember being a brand new cop, and I worked midnight shift in, we call it District 1, but it's kind of like that West Park, Pembroke Park area. At the time, it was unincorporated, Broward County. But, just crazy action all night long. and taking people to jail and fighting with people, and it would just be a wild night. And suddenly the sun would rise and people would come out of their homes holding their cup of coffee for the day. And I remember having like this epiphany of, it's like they don't even know what happened all night long with us. And let them live in their peace. Let us live this wild nighttime so that people can sleep in peace. And there became this part of like, don't let people know what we do, which has definitely changed throughout the years. So I went off, I became a detective, I did a lot of undercover stuff, and I started to realize the value of, infiltrating criminals boiled down to cooperation with the community, having informants, people trusting you with information. And I really changed in that moment and became a lot more collaborative with community partnerships. And realized that first interaction I had was kind of false. And so if you're going to see something that happens with me, is I like to give people the information. I think in police work it's almost a little taboo because my success depends on my ability to prevent and reduce crime. Well, I think police chiefs in general. I want the collaborative relationship. I can remember being investigating, let's say, burglaries in the area. And you canvass the area. You go knock on doors and hey, did you see anybody burglarize this house? No, I didn't see anybody burglarize my neighbor's house. But if I went and said, did you see anything suspicious? Did anybody knock on your door today? As a matter of fact, somebody did knock on my door, right? Because they didn't know that was the precursor to burglary. And so giving people the information of what crime looks like or precursors to crime looks like helps them help you, right? Because they don't know to call us unless they see an actual crime. But they might know to call us when they start to see things suspicious because we taught them that. So I like to give people the information. I like to say, crime is up in this area. Be on the lookout for whatever specific information may help in that.
Yeah. And as folks are listening to this, I mean, it's amazing. Like you've had to work in different areas of South Florida, and you mentioned Cooper City is like a Mayberry in a sense.
Yes.
It's different. Not to say that Cooper City doesn't have crime from time to time. It's just like any other community. But, in terms of the core memories, I think if you asked a lot of kids who grew up in this area, it's that they were able to ride their bike. Their parents were able to have a little bit of a sense of security that it's okay that my son or daughter is just riding their bike down to the corner where the stop sign is. Any core memories like that as a kid growing up that you look and you're like, my gosh, it's still that way. You can still do those things. And obviously public safety has a lot to do with that. But, what are those core memories that you have as a kid? I know you mentioned riding your bike, but things that just the second you drive into the city limits, you're like, it brings this sense of memories, if you will.
Absolutely. I'm telling you, I give it all less to public safety and more to the community. The community really looks out for each other. The community helps that self-regulation because ultimately when we drive through here, we usually live here. And we don't want to drive crazy because that could be my kid on the road next time. I believe there's a huge sense of community that helps us. But yeah, core memories. I love it. I love being here. I love my drive to work every day. I used to have to get on 595 or 95 or 75 or the Sawgrass Expressway and be in bumper-to-bumper traffic. And I drive in with my cup of coffee and I just look at beautiful Cooper City. I think it's just amazing.
In terms of, you went to school here. I mean, was law enforcement something that you saw as a career path early on and when you were a kid, or was it family? A lot of times we hear of law enforcement, well, my dad was a cop, my mom was, or my uncle. What's the story on your end?
Again, that's going to probably be a lot of transition. I was born an animal lover. I know that sounds strange to some people, but it's been very inherently in me. I've always loved animals. And so when I was little, you tell people you love animals, they'd be like, okay, well, you're going to be a vet when you grow up. And I can remember being 5 years old, holding a Land Before Time stuffed animal, talking to my dad, and I said, I want to help animals, I just don't know if I want to be a vet. And he's like, no, be a vet. So I spent my whole life
in school, anytime they say, what do you want to be when you grow up? I'd say a vet. And so I went off and I became a vet tech. So while I was at Cooper City High, I would drive to an animal hospital afterwards and work as a vet tech. And I did start getting interest in law enforcement. I actually, by the time I was graduating high school, I'd say I want to be a vet, a cop, and a lawyer. And I remember I was working at an animal hospital and somebody brought in pit bulls that looked like they'd been fought. And there's like a younger vet, and she's like, I'm going to call the police and report this. They look like they've been fought. And then there's an older, wiser vet who's basically, I almost think talks her out of it, and I don't necessarily think it's his fault, but he was saying, are you 100% sure? Are you an investigator? Are you going to go to court and testify to this? And she ended up not calling the police. Again, not their fault. I just don't think that we're really set up appropriately, and that's not through any fault of the vets or the police. I think there needs to be legislative change involved in how we investigate and report and prosecute animal cases. But I remember in that moment being like, well, somebody has to advocate for these dogs. And I was, like I said, 20 years old. I walked into the Broward Sheriff's Office. I sat in my interview against, there's a panel that's interviewing you. And I said, I want to work animal cruelty cases, and I'm going to use my experience as a vet tech to do so. So I think that had a lot of change. I actually... I would love to give a shout out to somebody. He may not know this, but when I was at Cooper City High, I was in anatomy, and my teacher was Mr. Gallimore. So Mr. Gallimore, if you're listening, I want to say a big thank you to you. He nominated me to go to the National Youth Leadership Forum on Medicine. I forget the numbers, but I was like, one of 300 kids in the United States, and I got a letter from Bill Clinton at the time, and went off, and I really feel like a lot of that changed the trajectory of my life. I met wonderful kids who are ambitious and driven, and I really think that was some just amazing step in the right direction that just kind of started pointing me towards achieving and seeking success.
And in a sense, it's a segue, because you came in at a time where the commission approved your appointment, where back in December there's the case where there's a lot of attention on the geese that were killed, and the community obviously has questions, and because I think, as you hit on it, they need an advocate, right? These are victims that don't have a voice. During a recent commission meeting, you help provide an update on where that is, and that you're still asking for the community to come forward, help us build a case, in a sense. And I just wanted to see if you wanted to help reiterate that message in terms of being that animal advocate, an animal lover who at the same time obviously wants to see something go forward in this investigation.
Absolutely. I would love to see the people who are responsible be held accountable for it. I don't know where the case is eventually going to go. I feel like the evidence is out there. We just don't have it in our fingertips yet. And we can't make arrests based on rumors, right? We need the evidence. So if somebody's got it on video, whoever was in that side-by-side was recording and it's just out there in Snapchat somewhere, we need that evidence. So I would love to get that. Please, if you have any information, reach out. We're investigating that. One of the things I think of 20-year-old me who came here, interviewed, and said, I want to help animals. I still want to do that. Being here in Cooper City, this is just such an amazing community to try innovative solutions. And so one of the things I did when I got here was create animal advocates on each shift. So this is, and again, not any fault of the law enforcement world, just the way we work. It's not like kids are, or not just kids, but people going through the police academy are not specifically taught animal crimes. It gets complicated. The statute is very broad, and a lot of times when it's a people crime, you have a statute supported by case law that you are taught. It's really driven in. There's practice that comes with it, and it's not really happening with animal crimes. And so I think there's also a lot of misconceptions about who's responsible to investigate animal crimes. whether it's another agency that's responsible. So one of the things I want to do is I want to make experts on each of my shifts. And so we designated animal advocates. We actually rolled out the class last week or the week before. We had a recognized industry expert come and teach the class. And it was about, he basically went through many cases and how he was able to prosecute and utilize the statutes. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen with that. We're going to definitely do some big things, but my goal is to have this program be a success and that other agencies will follow suit. They will also realize it works and eventually just make it mandated that they have to learn this stuff in the academy, that everybody will eventually have it. I remember when I was a brand new cop, crisis intervention was just starting, and I was one of the first classes to go to the crisis intervention team training. And I want to say at the time it was just designate someone in every district. And you become the person that has the most knowledge, is aware of the resources available, and when there is a crisis situation with maybe a mentally ill person or a Baker Act situation, you are the one, there's a little designation next to your name, and the dispatcher knows to dispatch you to that call because you will be able to de-escalate or provide the person with resources. I want that to be the same for animals. Let's start small. If it's just one person on each shift, but you have the most training, you know where the resources are, you've networked with the industry leaders, and you're able to help animals like that. But eventually the rollout becomes bigger and bigger. Honestly, I'd like to see it nationwide, worldwide. I'd love, more places to follow suit, but we're going to start it here in Cooper City and try to do big things.
And it's part of those initiatives that you're bringing in. Recently, you had an opportunity to meet with community leaders, and you spoke about, you had been the executive officer in Cooper City previously, which in a sense is second in charge. You mentioned there that you didn't feel like if you would have gone from executive officer right to district chief, that it perhaps would have been a little bit of a disservice in a sense, because you left for a little while and then you returned. What were those things that you learned? And I think you mentioned that it had to do with policy. What were those little things that maybe you learned that now you get to bring back?
Yeah, absolutely. I left back in, I think it was 2019. So 6 years I got to experience other things. It's funny because I think when I was brand new, I was called a Y kid, right? Like I try to ask my sergeant something and I'd be like, well, why? Mm-hmm. And he'd be like, this is your problem with your generation. There's a bunch of Y kids. But I feel like knowing the why helps you be a better person. So, when I went off to various assignments. One was being the executive officer of strategic investigations, learned a whole lot there. Unfortunately, I don't get to talk about it because it's a very undercover division. But then I went off to be working in the Office of the Inspector General. I'm actually a certified Inspector General. I was able to develop policy. And one thing with developing policy is you realize that you have so much to give to an agency, right? Because you could see a policy where you're like, I wonder if this procedure makes sense anymore. I wonder if it's something we really need to do. So your research skills get better. You start researching state law or, again, industry experts, dealing with the International Association of Chiefs of Police to see recommendations to bring back to your agency. And I really got to feed the Y kid. I dealt with accreditation, and so like a lot of what we did was utilizing the best practices to develop your policies and then audit that. And so I want to come back to Cooper City now having this knowledge of implementing best practices, to consult with industry experts, to research, find out why, and either eliminate it or incorporate it into Cooper City.
Yeah. Or perhaps improve it, as you mentioned, in a sense. We've talked about being animal advocates. Are there other initiatives that you're looking at long-term that you're looking to potentially bring into the district, or maybe improve something that you've seen, maybe now being 2 months into the job, that you're looking for is something that you could share with residents?
Yeah, actually, on top of being a huge animal advocate, I actually really love technology. Again, just comes with how I grew up. My dad was a computer guy, and so I had a computer in the house. And I remember when I became a brand new cop, at the time we were handwriting carbon copy probable cause affidavit. So you make an arrest, you got to handwrite on this affidavit, and you're brand new, so you screw things up, you got to crumble it up, start all over. Then afterwards, you go to the station to have your sergeant sign it, and he'd find something you did wrong, he'd crumble it up, he'd start all over, and if you couldn't fit that one last word, like the marijuana field tested positive, you had to do a whole continuation form and rewrite it all again. But after you dropped the guy off at the station and you took your last copy, which you could barely read, you had to go in a computer and type your report. But that report printed out a probable cause affidavit. So I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like, I could just do it initially on the computer and it'll print my probable cause affidavit. And I did it. I had the guy in the back of my car, typed out my probable cause affidavit. If I messed up, I backspaced and fixed it. And I went to the station, handed it to my sergeant to sign. He's like, what's this? I'm like, look, Sarge, I get to be back in service 80% faster, no mistakes. The state attorney can read it. And he was like, no, I had to handwrite, you'll handwrite. And so throughout my career, I try to always undo these very antiquated processes that slow us down. And one of the things that I was researching before I left my last assignment was the implementation of artificial intelligence technology. And a lot of people are like, oh, well, you're going to get rid of human jobs. No, I want to take away the administrative processes that keep us from the human element. If I have cops sitting at the station typing reports or filling out forms, they're away from the humans, right? Like they're no longer interacting with the community. So I want every process to be faster with technology so that I can put them back out on the streets and have them engaging with the community. Because that's what the important thing is that their ears are to the ground, that they're approachable.
No, and it correlates with a lot of things. In a sense, social media is a powerful tool. It allows us, in a sense, they call it social hearing, social listening. You'll see, and I think it goes across the board. Folks will say, well, I wish there was a cop or an officer sitting on this street just looking for speeding. And I think anybody in Cooper City would say that, especially in our main arteries, speeding is probably one of the larger issues when it comes to Griffin, to Sterling, Sheridan, University, Pine Island. So, I could see where that initiative helps a deputy get back on the street instead of we'll see it. They're writing a report even in a parking lot or something like that. So I'm sure that will go a long way. I mean, I wanted to help shift a little bit. You've had, obviously, you've risen through the ranks, and at the same time, you're a proud mom at the same time. I wanted to be able to engage a little bit with the personal side. When you're not working, what are the hobbies, the things that really make you enjoy life? Obviously, we know you love the animals, and you even have dogs, and you've had pets all your life. What are those things that you love to do if you're not working?
My husband and I, we have 3 kids. They're actually grown up, so we love to spend time with them. Mm-hmm. And it's so cool. I remember our kids, one time I was driving in the car with them, and they're like, what was your favorite age? Right? Like, do you like 4-year-olds? Do you like 10-year-olds? Do you like teenagers? I don't know if anybody likes teenagers. I'm just kidding. It's usually the 12-year-old range, right? But it's so cool because at the time I remember like looking at them in the rearview mirror and thinking it was like having new kids every couple of years because they change so much. And now we're enjoying them as adults, and they have significant others. And it was like bringing in this whole new family. Like my family's doubled because of just all these kids, and I'm just watching them be grown-ups. I'm listening to them talk about 401ks, and I'm like, wait, you're talking about investments, and a few years ago you couldn't roll up a garden hose, but it's just we just love spending time with them. One of our sons just bought a boat, so that's been nice because the best kind of boat you can have is someone else's boat.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, I think you mentioned it during that meeting that, you had to clean up, do everything afterward. Now it's a little bit, if you watch, there's memes and social media, and there's these videos that, the parents record and it shows them kicking their shoes off, throwing things all over, dropping food all over the place. So as a parent, you get to now kind of enjoy the things that your kids do. But yeah, I mean, I have, on my end, an 8 and a 6-year-old, and what you said exactly rings true. Every few years, it's almost like you go through this new chapter and you're learning more about them. So, I mean, what is something that somebody might be surprised to learn about you that they may not know, especially maybe after getting to know you a little bit?
So, not since I came to Cooper City, obviously, because, we got commission meetings and board meetings and all types of stuff, but I actually have played rugby for the past 4 years. My son, he was a high-level rugby player. He started actually when he was 13, but has an international championship and 2 national championships. He went to West Point to play rugby. He's just such a great player, and I never missed a game. I was at all these games, and I can remember people saying to me, Andrea, if you would have started playing when you were younger, you could have been really good. And I'm like, well, I'm not dead. I'll go find a team. So I go online, and I found a women's team here locally, and joined with 0 experience. And I mean, these are just amazing people. And I can remember thinking, I'm not going to tell anybody I'm a cop because, it's such a violent sport that my thought was it was going to be a bunch of ex-cons that, got to just keep the violence going legally.
Right.
And we have the most amazing women on my team. We have doctors and lawyers and scientists. And I mean, they're just military. They're just so many great women. And so it's just been a great many years playing with them. We've played in Florida. I was on another team where we traveled, I think it was 2 years ago, to Belize. We were the first women's team to play in a tournament in Belize. So it's just been, what a great ride it's been.
Yeah, I mean, and I think it correlates for a lot of folks. It's never too late to start something, right?
Absolutely.
You can always push the limits of knowing what you think you can do and go enjoy something different. Just never closing the doors, in a sense, to another opportunity. And overall, I really want to thank you for the opportunity to get to know you, not just, professionally, but, pulling the curtains back a little bit, sharing a little bit with the community about the personal side. Any other little message you want to share with the residents, maybe those that you might see on the street, maybe an event coming up, I don't think it takes long to understand that you're a personable person. You can come up and talk to you, and it seems like you can engage on almost any topic. But anything you just want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. If you see me at an event, I would love to get to know you. I really, like I said, I'm a Cooper City kid through and through, and I feel like even if I haven't met you, I already know you, and we're family, so feel free to come up, introduce yourself, and let's get to know each other.
Yeah. So, Captain Andrea Tianga, thank you for joining us on the podcast here as we keep Cooper City in the loop on all things happening here. Thank you again.
Thanks for having me.
Whether you already knew Captain Tianga or you're just starting to learn about her, I hope your main takeaway from today's podcast is that we are extremely fortunate to have her leading our law enforcement and the incredible experience that she brings to her role. As we look ahead to our next episode, I hope you'll listen along when we dive into a number of exciting projects that have either been completed around the city or some that are in the pipeline as we speak. We also talked to our new grants administrator who, in just a few short months, has already helped accelerate projects through her work. So we really look forward to that conversation as I look forward to talking to you soon as we continue keeping Coop in the loop.